My 365 Podcasts with me, Pete Cohen. My guest today is the brilliant Tom Herron, psychotherapist, sports psychologist, hypnotherapist, an all-round good guy. And you're going to be absolutely blown away by our discussion today, all about how to tap into your potential using the power of your breath. I hope you enjoy. Take care, sit back, and enjoy. Excited to have an amazing guest with us today in the studio. We're not actually in the studio, we're in his kitchen. We're in his, I think what they call this, what do they call these rooms? I'll come to that in a minute. But his name is Tom Herron, and his background is in psychology, anatomy and physiology, trauma, counselling, NLP and asthma care, and he is the founder of PEPS Fit. Tom, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, how are you?
I am really good, Pete, and thank you so much for introducing me and giving me such a hearing. I'm well. You mentioned PEPS Fit there.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
PEPS Fit is PEPS, which is physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritually fit.
Yes.
So I found out that being physically fit isn't enough for me. So I found out that there's emotional issues and there's psychological issues and there's spiritual issues that need to be addressed.
Yes.
So I decided that to make things safe for me, that's what I did.
Well, one of the things we do on My 365 is really look to inspire people to look at life from a different perspective, help people to be the best that they can possibly be in their life. So it's always great to speak to people like you who that's what they do for a living. But tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your story. How did you, because we were talking earlier on, you used to manage betting shops. So I'm curious as to a man who used to manage betting shops could go into the world of psychology and trauma, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's interesting because I probably had the best schooling for trauma known because I was in the bookmaking and pub business for 25 years. And now I know what it's like to be on both sides of the betting game, because there's so much trauma involved with drinking and betting, as you know. To me, all addictions are like trauma makes us yield to addiction. Now, the betting game, I left it because it wasn't a way that I wanted to make money. It's not a way I wanted to make a living anymore, because basically someone had to lose for me to make a living, so I decided that's not for me. Now, it was good to me financially, so I didn't know how to replace it. So people were saying to me things like, "Is your head right? Why did you leave that?"
Because your father was also...
My father was...
So it was your father's...
my father's business, which
So why did you go into it? Did you always want to go into it, or was it this sort of thing?
It was the easiest way that I could make money at the time. It was the easiest way for me to make money, so I stopped school early and stuff like that to do that. And
were you naturally good at it?
I was in it from I was 9. And I always had a great issue with maths. Now, it's ironic to think that I was in the bookmaking business, but I was really good at machines. So I got these machines that would count for me. And I would just happen to be at the time when I couldn't count the bet myself, but I had a machine that would do it. And so people that were really good at counting bets used to ring me up to count them for them.
Wow.
So it was amazing. So it turned completely on its head. When I couldn't count the bet, I was lost. But basically, when I had this machine, I got really good at using it.
And what was it like kind of working in that world on a kind of day-to-day basis?
It was very exciting, but it left me extremely anxious. And I was pumped with adrenaline, pumped with cortisol all the time, because we were every race was sometimes like a life or death thing, because it was my livelihood. But someone had to lose for me to make a living. Now, it sounds like there's nothing wrong with gambling, there's nothing wrong with anything like that. However, it's just something I didn't want to make my living at anymore. But I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do. So basically I wanted to find out what was actually wrong with me. People were saying, there has to be something wrong with you when you leave a good business. So I said, maybe there is. So the first thing that made any sense to me at all was hypnosis. So I went and I learned hypnosis. and I learned how to chill out with hypnosis. And I found, there's something else I need. So I started to look at the psychological side of things. So I started to look at psychology degrees, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do. So whilst I was doing that, I got interested in how the body works. So anatomy fascinated me, and physiology fascinated me, and how they all tied together fascinated me. And then I started to look at things like other drivers in human beings, the sort of the spiritual side of humanity, that thing, that spirit within us that keeps us going. And didn't know a lot about it. So I found out that a lot of people had forgiven me in their lives. So I found that forgiveness was very useful. So I started to learn something about that. Starting to let people off the hook. So I started to let myself off the hook. And bit by bit, it came together into the PEPS Fit program, and that's what it's about. So there's a physical aspect, an emotional aspect, a psychological aspect, and a spiritual aspect, all coming together and just making us the person we choose to be.
So what is it that drives you? What is it that you kind of...
I like to help people.
Yeah. So you like to help people. So let's talk about, what do you find is most common with people in terms of where they are? Because I find a lot of people, they're a bit stuck, they're a bit lost, they're a bit confused. They want more, but they don't necessarily know. What are some of the typical challenges that you see in people, and what are some of the ways in which you help people kind of overcome those challenges?
One of the things in Northern Ireland at the moment, one of the big things is a lot of people are in debt, in financial debt. Mm-hmm. So basically they're feeling really bad about it. And I have found in my practice that people will talk to me about anything. They'll talk to me about their sex lives, their wives, but they'll not talk to me about their finances because it's so guarded. Yeah. And it's like their identity is tied up with their financial affairs. However, when they realise that there's something they can do about it, and they're so scared, and some of them take it to the extreme, and I've lost some great friends that have taken their lives because of debt. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was a particular area that needed addressed, and so we started to form a little group, and basically it's to show them how to increase their self-esteem, show them how to manage things instead of scaring the life out of themselves, and show them what to do step by step when they have to go to court, if they do have to go to court, because it's a scary place. And I found that one of the best ways to help them was to show them how to manage their breathing.
Okay, so let's talk about, that's fascinating, because again it is an area that a lot of people, an issue that people have around money, it's something they don't talk about. So when we're looking at the average human being that you come into contact with, what are some of are you saying one of the common things is some sort of fear?
Anxiety.
Anxiety about what? Anxiety about money?
Anxiety about money, anxiety about anything. Like you know well that phobias are the upper end of the anxiety scale. Yes. And to me, epilepsy is as well. Yeah. Epilepsy is way up at the top end. Now, and it's different degrees of anxiety of where we are on that spectrum or that scale. And anxiety is really useful for keeping us for making us do things. It gets us out of the way. Like if something jumps out of you, you run. It's pretty useful to get you out of the way in fearful situations. However, we are not in the habit of something jumping out at us really, but we are in that state that we think it's going to happen. So you spoke about that when you were in the betting game, that yes.
Throughout the day you'd go through those huge cycles of anxiety, because of a horse won or a horse lost, and how much money that you lost. And you're saying, we were talking before about the way people live their life in the modern world now, that with the phone going off, with text messages, with emails, are you saying that kind of elicits an anxiety response in people?
We go into what we call the fight or flight response, and we have great difficulty getting out of the fight or flight response.
Yes.
Now, I found out through study and through a bit of research that I did that in those times the sympathetic nervous system is engaged. And I was watching, one time I used to farm ostriches, and I could see this ostrich.
I can't stop you there. how did someone in the betting industry get into farming ostriches? Because it's not the sort of thing, I don't know anyone that's done that, but you're the first person. How did that happen?
I didn't know what to do, and I had. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
But why? I mean, so someone tell you that it's a good idea.
It was like a get-rich-quick scheme.
A get-rich-quick scheme, like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, at the time.
Did you get in at the top?
I got in at the top. Of course, I got in at the top. But it's like it fascinated me because nobody knew anything about ostriches. We got these guys from South Africa, and they knew lots of things about ostriches in South Africa. But it didn't transfer to Northern Ireland.
Right, so how many did you bring in? Where was your first shipment of ostriches?
My first
I think we're going off task here, but I don't care.
The first ostriches I got was 20. And they were only little chicks. But I finished up with handling hundreds and hundreds of ostriches.
And how do you make money from selling from ostriches? Eggs, meat?
Eggs, meat, and basically there's byproducts like their feathers are used in the cleaning industry because it's non-static and it's good for cleaning cars and stuff like that. It's good for cleaning computers.
Yeah,
so it's used in that. However, it wasn't the greatest money making scheme, but it kept me busy whilst I was studying. Now, the ostrich could go into total frenzy and it'd last for 5 or 10 seconds, and then it was as if it never happened. And that was a skill that I'd love to learn. How do I learn that?
So you saw ostriches doing that, and
yes.
You thought, well, how do I learn to do that?
Because I could get into the fight or flight, but I had great difficulty winding down.
Yeah.
And I had used the hypnosis, and I'd found it very useful. However, it wasn't getting to me like the way the ostriches could just switch it off.
Yeah.
So I started I got introduced to reduced breathing. And I first heard about that when a client gave me a CD, there was no CDs at that time. It was a tape, and it was from a lady that was in London, the Teresa Hill Clinic. It was called.
Yeah, the Hill Clinic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was a guy there called Stalmatsky.
Yeah.
A Russian guy who was doing a thing called the Buteyko method. And I was fascinated with it, and I says, "Oh, that's useful." And I listened to the CD. I bought the book, and the book made a lot of sense to me, but I couldn't actually translate it into action for myself because I needed coached in it. So I met a guy called Patrick McKeown, and Patrick McKeown coached me in it, and him and I stayed with it for many years, and I found that it just completely transformed my breathing.
And then what was the knock-on effect from transforming your breathing?
The knock-on effect was that I could get out of fight or flight response and get into rest and digest.
So you obviously found something yourself in terms of how you were living your life.
Sure.
Like many people, I suppose, and being in a high stressful job and the ups and downs of the fight or flight response, anxiety, highs, lows,
sure.
And then leaving it and then finding a way through ostriches.
Sure.
It's funny how you find things in life.
It's amazing.
You saw ostriches doing something and you thought, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
And then you learned to do that. And that's now something that you basically are teaching people to manage themselves better. Is that right?
Absolutely. And whatever the situation is that it doesn't matter what's going on around them, they can manage how they are themselves.
Okay, so let's look at, there's a couple of things here. Let's look at some practical things that people can do. But also, why do you think people get so anxious? Because from my experience, what I see is that you're right, people check their emails 100 times a day. They've got bleeps going off, whether it's WhatsApp, Snapchat, Instant Messenger, Skype. There's things going off all the time. What effect does that have on people over an extended period of time, do you think?
Well, from my own experience, our world seems to be based on fear. I was brought up in Northern Ireland, and my religion at that time was like, if you don't do this, you're bad and you'll go to hell.
Yeah.
So there was fear there. Then there was the army was about. So there was a fear there with the army, because the army was in Northern Ireland throughout most of my childhood. And then the police, there was, if you do something wrong, you'll go to jail. And then if the tax man, if you don't pay your taxes, you'll go to jail. And there was all this fear, building up the fear, no matter all the pillars of society was fear-based.
Yeah, and I suppose the other fear with all of that, you could imagine that you then think there must be something wrong with you, and frightened that you're not good enough and you don't fit in, which seems to be, everyone seems to have that. So
one of the things that I did was I self-medicated with alcohol.
Yeah.
And if I thought I knew fear before that, I definitely knew it afterwards, because I was extremely anxious after drinking.
Yeah.
And it would magnify itself 100 times after drinking. So I had to find ways of hitting that on the head as well. I remember that I never actually taught myself to enjoy myself without it. And one of the things was that I felt deprived if I went somewhere and couldn't take a drink or something like that, because I didn't know what to do. I felt like a fish out of water. So one of our mutual friends, I was with Richard Bandler in London.
Yeah, the founder and creator of neurolinguistic programming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said to me that if something's not working, do something else. And I says, Richard, I don't actually know what to do. You know, you say do something else, but what else can I do?
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you don't know what to do, start with the opposite of what you're doing. So I did. So
that's so powerful.
It's amazingly powerful. And I used some of his eye-accessing cues. Yes. And the eye-accessing cues, I was looking up to my top right, and I was imagining my friends in this video saying, come on, Tom, let's go and have a drink, and sure, what harm are you doing?
Yeah.
You're working hard all week, you're entitled to it. And I really felt that I was. So I remember Richard's voice coming into my head and saying, whatever you're doing, if it's not working, do something else. And you don't know what else to do the opposite of what you're doing. So I just imagined that I was looking to the top right. So to me, the opposite to top right was bottom left. So without moving my head, I moved my eyes to the bottom left. And I imagined myself kneeling over the loo, throwing up into the loo.
Or the same night?
The same night.
From having too much alcohol?
From having too much alcohol.
Yeah.
And every time that I felt like the urge to drink, I would just drop my eyes to the bottom left and imagine this. And that's many years ago, and I haven't drank since.
Wow. So that's the power, isn't it, of kind of thinking about the consequences of your actions.
Absolutely.
So how does someone... Let's give some practicality, because I think it's great, isn't it, for people to realise, it's okay to have those feelings. Sure. It kind of makes us human.
Yes.
But I remember someone saying to me once, observe what the masses are doing and then do the opposite. So how does someone go from living with anxiety to finding a state of,
Serenity.
Serenity. So, wow, there must be loads of people listening to this all over the world that would say, you know what, I'd love to feel, I don't know, I suppose, for me personally, I suppose calmer. We were talking before, when my wife became sick many years ago, that trauma of seeing all of that, I still feel sometimes I haven't let that go. And also sometimes I feel like I told you the other day I was working constantly and I was observing myself, filming, looking through the camera, looking at some other people, and I was looking at myself going, oh my God, I am actually not breathing. I could pass out at any moment in time. Yep. So how does someone, if someone wants to have more peace in their life, what are some of the ways that you work with people to help people?
I find that my head for many of my years was saying to me things like, you need a cigarette, or I smoke cigars, and I loved them. I really did love the cigars, and I thought they were chilling me out big time. Or it would say to me, you need a drink. So I realised that I can't really trust what my head is saying to me, because when I tested my body smoking the cigar or taking the alcohol, it told me the opposite. So my head was telling me lies, and I knew my body was telling me the truth. Yeah, right.
So let's talk about that, because that to me is fascinating. You said before about listening to your body. How can we get in touch with our body to change our psychology and feel perhaps more at peace more of the time?
But what I found was the easiest way for me to get into my body and out of my head. Out of my head used to mean different things to me, but now it means to get out of thinking, out of those thoughts that are annoying me.
Yeah.
Those ruminating thoughts. So what I do is I breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, and I hold my breath for a count of 10 or 15, whichever's comfortable. Then I recover through the nose and I do it again. For example, if something was annoying me when I was driving along the road, I would pick something ahead of me, like a signpost or a bridge, and I'd breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, and I hold my breath till I get to that signpost, to that bridge, to that landmark.
Yeah.
And then recover through my nose, and then do it again. We've got a motorway here called the M1, and I regularly hold my breath between bridges, and the journey just completely goes so easily without thinking about anything.
Okay, so let me do that. Talk me through that, and maybe some of our listeners can do that as well. So breathe in through the nose.
Breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, and hold the breath until it gets uncomfortable. Breathe out. Hold your breath on the out breath. And as you hold it, you'll begin to realise that you need to breathe, and then you start to recover through the nose, and then do it again. Now remember, you took a big breath when I asked you to do that, because we mix up big with deep. We can bring a small breath deep into our diaphragm. It doesn't have to be big, because if someone says to you, take a deep breath, we immediately think they've said take a big breath.
Yeah, and then you can have, because I feel a bit wheezy.
Yes, so you feel
not wheezy, wobbly.
You feel a bit wobbly. Now, the reason why that's very natural, and that will happen because you've increased your CO2 levels, your carbon dioxide levels, and your brain says, get rid of it. So most people have noticed that they have an intolerance to CO2 if they get yawning in a room with people in it. They'll have to yawn.
Yeah.
It means the CO2 levels have risen in the room, and your brain says, get rid of them. It's not that you're tired or bored. Not necessarily that you're tired or bored. It's because the CO2 levels have risen in the room, and you're responding to them physiologically. So basically reducing your breathing and breathing less, because we all breathe more than the body needs. And it actually has worse consequences, from my experience, than eating more than the body needs.
Yeah, well, I remember reading the book, we spoke about this before, in the 90s, someone gave me a book by John Goulard, and he spoke about this breathing, because I used to exercise, and I was on a treadmill running very fast, and this guy said, how many breaths are you taking?
Yeah.
And I was taking loads.
Yes.
He said, so many breaths you can take running at the same speed. Now, obviously I couldn't, but I thought, okay, I'll give this a challenge. I read the book, and maybe we can just delve into some of the science of what happens when you do this. But in essence, what I did is, okay, I stopped running. I had to swallow my ego and thought, okay, I'm not going to run, I'm going to walk and get this breath rate down. And I got it down to maybe 6 to 9 breaths in a minute, running, and eventually I could run at the same pace, taking 6 to 9 breaths as opposed to 50 breaths. And when I finished running, I felt like I hadn't done anything, and I could have carried on running for ages. And I did that with loads of my clients. Clients lost weight, clients had better performances, but then I stopped in the fitness industry, went into psychology, and kind of forgot it, and forgot using that breathing technique myself. So what happens when you do that to most people?
Well, when we breathe in, we fill our lungs full of air, and 21% of that is oxygen. Now, if you imagine we need 6, so we don't have to store the oxygen because it's always readily available. Now, out of the 21%, we need 6. So basically, the oxygen is then carried by the red blood cells around the body, and every cell takes the oxygen from the red blood cells when it needs it. Now, there's an issue because oxygen bonds to hemoglobin. It bonds to the red blood cells, and we can't use oxygen when it's bonded to the hemoglobin. So basically, what we need to do, the only thing that can break that bond is a mixture of water and CO2, carbon dioxide, which produces carbonic acid, and that breaks that bond chemically, which releases the oxygen from the blood, and we can use it. Now, by breathing through our mouths, we drop our CO2 levels too low, so we haven't got sufficient CO2 to break the bond sufficiently. So, actually, the less we breathe, the more oxygenated we become, and it sounds like a contradiction. But it means that we can use the oxygen that's already in the blood readily. And it works so beautifully. Also, carbon dioxide is a vasodilator, which means that it opens up our veins and arteries. It's also a bronchodilator, which opens up our airways. So we can open up the airways, open up the veins and arteries as we run. So you're actually recovering as you run, rather than having to run and then recover afterwards. So it's like your body's being properly oxygenated and your body's being properly lubricated. So you're going to have less chance of injury.
So this is something you've been teaching. And tell me the story about Stevie McEwen. This is a guy that did 100 marathons in 100 days, and soon will be doing 60 marathons in 60 days. And you saw him running, and then you thought, I'm going to call him up and tell him he's not breathing properly.
I saw this, and I was so impressed with that young man's achievements that I said, I want to help this young man. And I rang him up and I said, Stevie, I'd met Stevie a couple of times. I'd seen him doing different things, but we hadn't really spoken. You know, we just said hello to each other. And I said, look, I want to help him with this a challenge that he's coming up with, which is, I think it's 39.3 miles per day for 60 days.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. So I rang him up and I said, Stevie, look, I think I can help you with something. So he says, right. So he came down and we had a chat, and I said, Stevie, I think I can help you with your breathing. If you start breathing in and out through the nose rather than through the mouth, it could help you maintain your fitness, and you can recover as you run. So, and then I thought, the audacity of me telling this young man that I was only after doing 100 marathons in 100 days, but he listened to it and he took it on board and he really took it with him, and I think he's finding the benefits of it now too.
Yeah.
You know,
because you've worked with lots of athletes. You work with, tell me the type of athletes that you work with.
I've worked with loads of different athletes, from Olympians down to guys in the local clubs. I work with people of all ages as well, because there's a PEPS fit for the over 60s, there's a PEPS fit for weight management, there's a PEPS fit for people that work with other people, for care workers.
And what sort of things happen when people start using, is basically, how would you describe it? People using oxygen more efficiently, or people breathing more efficiently, or people living more efficiently?
It makes, if your body's been oxygenated and lubricated properly, everything works much better and it doesn't wear the same. If you were driving your Ferrari and it just wasn't getting lubricated properly and you took the air filter off it, it would go.
Yeah.
Well, it would come a cropper down the road somewhere.
So when people aren't breathing properly, what sort of side effects do they have? Lack of sleep, poor health, poor circulation?
Genetically, it'll depend on what is in their genes. If they have heart trouble, it'll go to their heart. If there's diabetes in the family, that's where it'll hit them. If they've got arthritic or joint problems, that's where it'll hit them. If they've got digestion problems, it'll hit them there. If they've got heart problems because of the heart variability, it'll hit them there. And if they've got psychological or depression problems, that's where it'll manifest itself.
Yeah.
So it's not that it'll affect, but it's not that it'll affect a particular person in a particular way all the time. It'll affect different families in different ways. And it's really fascinating, because some of the things that we do, and like I asked a gentleman today, does he get cold feet? And he told me he did. And I says, yeah, well, you know,
that was me, by the way. I've got big feet. Is that anything to do with it? No. Size 12. We have
you see, the feet are perfect for your size.
Yes.
You know, the designer was pretty good at it. You know.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that it's one of the ways that we can notice if our breathing isn't all that it should be, because your extremities will suffer first. You get cold hands, cold feet, because that's the furthest your blood has to go.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it, really? And I think common sense isn't common practice. And I think we live in a world where so many people almost want things. I mean, when I was sick in my 20s. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, ME. I was just diagnosed with these things, and I wanted people constantly to tell me what was wrong with me. I wanted the diagnosis. Oh, I've got that condition, right? When really it was all to do with, I think, how I was managing myself and taking ownership, right? Taking ownership of the most important thing I'll ever do in my entire life, which is breathe, right?
Sure.
So what are some of the practices that people could do in order to... Oh, no, how does someone know that they're not breathing very well, I suppose?
We have a little measurement, and it's called the body oxygen level test. And it's very simple. Now, what do we get people to do is to breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the nose, hold their breath, hold their nose, and time in seconds until the first urge to breathe.
Okay, so let's do that, right? So then people can do... If you're driving a car, don't do this. Okay, so I've also got a big nose as well. So
that's good.
Does that mean I can take more air than everybody else?
That means that the filter is you've got a bigger filter because you need it because you're big feet.
Okay, so
breathe in through the nose.
Yeah.
Out through the nose. Hold your breath, hold your nose. And we're going to time in seconds. Just to the first urge. And relax. Now, as you see, that your breath is actually too heavy now. The first urge means that when you let go, your breath will be as calm. You've just held it too long. You held that for 22 seconds. But we're going to drop that back a bit. So say, for example, that your Bolt score would be, say, 19.
Because now I feel quite uncomfortable.
Yes, you feel uncomfortable. So basically, it's just to the first urge. It's just to the first urge. Now, the reason why we don't get people to hold their breath for the maximal pause is because sometimes it can make them cough.
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting with someone, I'll get them to do a maximal pause sometimes. But it's very safe to do just to the first urge. And when you let it go after the first urge, when you let your nose go and you recover breathing, your breathing should be calm, not erratic. So that's how you know whether you've held it too long or not. Now, the longer that is, the healthier you'll be. Now,
so a good practice there would be...
Good practice is to basically, that's just a measurement.
Yeah.
That's not an exercise. So basically, a practice that would be really useful for people is to breathe in through their nose, out through their nose when they're walking. Hold their breath for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 steps.
Yeah.
Whatever's comfortable. Then recover.
Okay.
Breathing in and out through the nose and do it again. Then recover, breathing in and out through the nose, then do it again. If you're feeling more energetic, you can start to run.
Yeah.
Just let your nasal parameters tell you what speed to go at.
And then through doing this over time, the people are going to start kind of oxygenated their body.
They'll oxygenate their body better. Everything will work better. Things like IBS will disappear. Things like I've worked with people with Crohn's disease. I've worked with people with type 1 diabetes. Like, when you reduce your breathing, you reduce your blood sugar.
Yeah.
It's amazing the effect it can have on any condition. It'll have a beneficial effect. It's amazing if those that have asthma, when they reduce their breathing, their symptoms will disappear.
Yeah.
When people that have got anxiety, when they reduce their breathing, their anxiety will decrease.
So why do people find it quite difficult sometimes to just get going with these sorts of things?
Well, basically, we tend to want it now.
Yeah.
We tend to want it now, and the body has to recondition itself. So it takes a while to recondition itself. Like, if I was working with an athlete, I would be expecting, 6 months before the athlete could do what he could do.
Yeah.
Beforehand, with his mouth closed and doing it properly. But he would never go back to mouth breathing.
Yeah.
It
seems like one of the hardest things in modern society is that taking your time with things and realising that if you want something to happen, you have to give it time.
Yeah. And it's like, but we do. It's just some things that we don't take time with. Like, we know that we'll see daffodils at this time of the year. We don't expect to see them at some other time of the year.
Yeah.
We'll get, so we do know that there are cycles. But the body will take its time to do things. If we force it against its will, we'll hurt it.
Yeah, that's what we do, right?
That's what we do.
So let's talk about a couple more things. So you spoke about forgiveness before. There's another thing I wanted to... I don't know whether you've heard of the expression ikigai, which is a Japanese word for your reason for living. Okay. You know? So that a lot of people have an ikigai every day. So in Japan, for example, the word for retirement doesn't exist. Okay. You know, so people tend to live much longer lives because they have a purpose for living. They don't have a purpose and then the purpose ends because they don't have a job. Mm-hmm. They just have... How important do you think it is for people to connect to something kind of larger than themselves in their life?
Well, we're so, in the West, identified with our work because our work seems to identify us like he's a lawyer, he's a policeman, he's a dentist, he's a, what do you call it, and that's his identity. Whereas it's only part of what he is. Like he's a man, he's a human being, he's a husband, he's a brother, he's a friend, So we have this identification with what we do, and this thing about success. I remember success being usually in monetary terms.
Yeah,
and we can't succeed simply because success comes from succession to the throne, but there usually can only be one king.
Is that where the word comes from?
Yes.
So success comes from successor.
Success.
So
only one.
Yeah, right.
So we're all trying to be kings, in that sense.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of failures. So in that, because we can't all be king.
Yeah.
So where's the safety net? So what I like to realise is that all my life I've heard about being you're too negative, or you're too this or too that. But what I have found out is that my shadow will teach me as much or more than any positive things that I've done. Because I love the human side of people. I know that there's a human side to everybody. And that shadow that I'm talking about is that part of us that we don't want anyone to see. We don't want to own it.
Yeah.
We don't want to acknowledge it. And we certainly don't want anybody to know about it. Simply because if anybody knew this part of us, we couldn't be loved.
But that's one of the reasons why people don't breathe very well, right? Because they're holding on to something about themselves they don't want to show.
Absolutely.
That's why, I suppose, public speaking is... I heard the other day that people are more frightened of public speaking than they are of dying. So that, at the eulogy, they'd rather be dead than to get up and speak. You know, I mean, so... Let's talk about forgiveness, because you spoke about that before, and a couple of things you said that were really profound about that.
Well, forgiveness, if you look at the word, it's forgiving. It's forgiving away. So to me, it has nothing to do with the other person. It's letting you off the hook. Because as Paul McKenna told me one time, he says, holding a grudge is like you drinking poison hoping the other fella will die.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work too well, that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And we were speaking also before about, when you were kids and you used to do something and then you felt like you got away with it. What was that word we said?
Just letting someone off the hook.
Yeah, so why is it important for people to let themselves off the hook?
Well, the way to... Because we all love the feeling of being let off the hook.
Yeah. Because then we can live, right? If we forgive ourselves for what we've been doing to ourselves and beating ourselves up and running ourselves down. Is that what you mean?
We're allowed to love ourselves more by allowing ourselves the right to be wrong and allowing ourselves to forgive ourselves.
Mm.
And I find that's really useful for me because, I'm human. I get it wrong regularly. However, I can learn from that.
Yeah.
I can learn from that so much. So basically, if I do something wrong, I can learn so much more from that than doing it right.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it?
But we dismiss it and we say, oh gosh, I've done this again, and I've done this again, and I've done this again. And basically it is, learn from it. I'm an experiential learner. I remember when I was 9 years old. Actually, I must have been younger because my father died when I was 9. And he took me to the barber's. And he was having a shave. And all I could see in the barber's shop was these really lovely, shiny, cutthroat razors. And the barber knew that I was fascinated with these things. And he says, don't touch those. They're very sharp and they'll cut you. But I got him blindsided and I lifted it. And surely enough, I cut myself with it. And I remember putting my hand in my shorts, because I was wearing short trousers at that time, and the blood was running through the pocket under my leg, And then they saw that I was bleeding, so there's a whole trauma about this. However, I didn't lift it again. I didn't lift it again.
Yeah.
That was a lesson learnt. Now, I happen to be an experiential learner like that, so sometimes I have to get burnt before I learn. That's just... Now, I probably don't have to do that all the time, and I've learnt to know the difference now. But being burnt sometimes, it's a way to learn.
Yeah.
I remember this grandfather was playing with a child, and the father came in, and the child ran over to the father. The child was only a little toddler. It wasn't a toddler, it was crawling. And there was a big fire, open fire with no guard on it. And the child was walking over to the fire, and the father said, no, you can't get there, and he pulled the child back. And the child then walked over to it again. It became a game for the child, and the child was laughing. And he says, I've got to stop that. And the grandfather came in and he says, leave him with me. So he brought the child over, and he brought it very close to the fire, and he put the child's hand out, and the child pulled the hand back, felt the fire, put the hand back, and didn't do it. Learnt.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. So it's fabulous, those human things that we can learn from.
Yeah.
We're all human, and anything you can feel, someone else can feel the same.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about you?
The website is www.pepsfit.com, PEPSFIT.com. And my name is Tom Herron, and feel free to email me at pepsfitselfcare@gmail.com.
And will people be able to get
the CDs and what he calls will be on downloads form?
Yeah.
The CDs being constructed, or the website's in construction at the moment, but we're getting there, and it's fascinating.
I really, really appreciate being able to spend this time with you, and for me personally, I'm going to apply a lot of these principles, and I will be in touch with you. And I just want to thank you, and I'm sure all of our listeners will absolutely take some big joy from listening to you. And your lovely Irish accent there.
Thank you so much. It's just been such a treat and such a pleasure, such an honour to...
I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you want more free inspiration to optimize your life so you can achieve your goals in all the different areas of your life, then visit my365.me. That's mi365.me, and sign up to 365 days of free coaching with me, Pete Cohen. Thanks for listening, and have an awesome day.